Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. There are some standout weapons still, of course, and today I wanted to really go in depth on the current meta and rank the top 10 best weapons that we've got available right now. As we get into the details here, if you guys enjoy the video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor, drop a like. It would be seriously appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee we're always up to date with the latest meta breakdowns. Obviously, season 6 coming up is going to shake things up alongside news, updates, patch notes on a daily basis. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So initially here, starting off at number 10, I've got the Cronen Squall. This thing has seen buffs, this thing has seen nerfs, more recently in fact, but it still has remained a top tier option for some time now, and part of it is sort of like the familiarity, I guess. We're all comfortable with this gun by now. We know the recoil, we know how it feels in semi-auto versus full auto, and this build in particular is good to sort of flip-flop, you know, full auto for close to mid-range if you're fighting in those scenarios, semi-auto for long range for that slightly faster TCK. It's a good balance here and really versatile when it comes down to it. So AMOP V4, but you can use whatever optic you are the most comfortable with. 50 round drum as always on here as well. I go for the FTAC Ripper underbarrel, obviously going to help out that stabilization and stability for full auto, but also helps out a ton with that recentering speed in semi-auto as well. 490 compensator on here helps out with horizontal control, so in full auto when you're spraying and praying, it's going to be easier to control. In semi-auto when you are spamming as well, it's going to be easier. Then lastly, I go for the 6.8 barrel, some better range, velocity, and control on here, that better pizza Papa John's type vibe, that 3-in-1 combo. Again, just making the weapon even more optimized for mid to long range. So it's a familiar setup for sure, one that absolutely is still a top tier choice though. Now, arguably one of the easiest guns in the game is the HCR. This thing is a straight laser beam. It has next to no recoil whether you're fighting at 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters. This thing is a beam, just straight up point and shoot. You're good to go, which means that we can really focus on optimizing this even more for long range by helping out with the velo and whatnot, making it a super straightforward weapon to use. So I got AMOP V4 on here yet again. I do go for the Stip 40 rear grip. This is going to help out even more with the control, and again, just make it even easier to use, which is obviously nice to have on there. You don't need a magazine here. 60 rounds works fine with this fire rate. I do go for high velocity, not something you absolutely need on most weapons in this game just because of where you're going to take most of your fights, but where you can throw it on, you might as well have it. It's going to make that hit reg feel a bit more consistent. I got the Ripper underbarrel on there yet again, same deal as before, and I go for the Harbinger D20 suppressor here. This is a heavier option, so it does offer some recoil control on top of velocity and range. That said, you could also use Echoless 80. That's a good choice as well. You could also go for a compensator if you really wanted just insane recoil control. That might be a bit overkill for that, I won't lie, but there are some options you can mess around with there. This though has worked well for me for several seasons now. This thing is a slept on gun that's absolutely dominant. Now the Lachmann Shroud, our current latest weapon in the game, definitely is in the top 10 right now. It's just kind of weird with how it falls because it's so good in the right hands and so mediocre in the wrong hands, right? You basically just have to be able to spam this thing. It's got its peak in semi-auto where you can just spam that fire rate like crazy, which most players can't do. You're gonna, you know, mess up. There's human, flaw in there for sure that will cause you to stutter here and there and not be able to keep up the accuracy here and there. So realistically, its true TTK is solid, but not game breaking. If you can spam it, it is game breaking. But like I said, realistically, that won't happen most of the time. That said, the setup here is still super aggressive, whether you want semi-auto or burst. You just got to keep, laying on the trigger there so you can spam it as much as possible. For ammo, first up, you really could use any of the main three, which is everything but AP. So overpressured, I like because it gives that added flinch and makes enemies kick up more and miss shots. Hollow point is great because it's going to stun them. Basically, frangible is going to limit their ability to run away. So these are like all solid options for sure. Would highly recommend any of those. 40 round mag, I like a little bit more than the 50 just because it's a slightly faster reload mainly there. TCG 10 rear grip is for better control, but I tune for that inverse of better mobility. The mobile stock, just great all around for increasing that mobility stat a ton. Then the 7mm laser for that snappier ADS and sprint to fire. Thing is a beast, it's just kind of awkward to use at times. Now another LMG here at number 7, I've got the Sakin. I mean, it's really an LMG meta right now in Warzone just because these things are so good over range, right? This thing is nuts. It is, again, so easy to use, right up there with the HCR in terms of ease of use. You point, you shoot, you're gonna land your shots. It's also got a phenomenal TTK over range as well. Like, this thing is just very well rounded. That said, it is ridiculously slow and your reload is abysmal, so you gotta, keep that in mind as you're engaging. I do have the AMOP V4 on here yet again, Stip 40 as well, so again, once more, just so easy to use with the added help and added control of that. I go for the Edge 47 underbarrel here. Your ADS is already slow enough that I don't love jumping up to Ripper, but if you wanted that extra control and extra stabilization, absolutely you could do so. Just keep in mind you'll be a little bit slower. Polar fire as suppressor here. It's not a heavier option, so just straight up better velocity and range. Then I also go for the Silver Series barrel. Better control, better velocity, better range here, as well as feeling nice and consistent. So this thing, much like the HCR, takes little to no effort to actually master, and it's low risk, high reward. One of my personal favorites in the game is the Vel. This thing is a beast of an SMG, really just extremely versatile when it comes down to it. Good in the close range, good in the mid range for sniper support as well. Everywhere where you'd realistically use an SMG, this is good at. It's also super low recoil and very easy to use, which is a nice added bonus as well. So here initially I got the RXT stock, better sprint speed and ADS speed. If you wanted to jump up to collapsed, you could do so, but your recoil is going to be more noticeable, so I don't really love that. RXT works fine for me. Soldier rear grip, better ADS and sprint to fire, 7mm laser, more of the same. 50 round mag, if you wanted to jump up to 60, feel free to do so. It's just going to be a little bit slower there. Then lastly, I like some added control on here just for like the mid range and the sniper support area. KT85 compensator is going to make this thing shoot a little bit straighter, and again, just make it easier to use. So when you can get that added boost there, make the weapon so straightforward, you might as well take it. You don't necessarily need an ammo option here. Again, though, if you wanted to use hollow point, if you wanted to use overpressured or frangible, they're all good choices as well. It just depends on your level of comfortability with the gun. Regardless of how you build it, though, it's solid. Now at number 5, I've got the MP5. This thing's a beast for close range, and quite frankly, you can make an argument for this being number 4, and of course we'll get to that here in just a moment, but this thing is as good as you could possibly ask for close range. This thing's gonna fry in that first damage range, super aggressive, clean iron sights, good hip fire. It's checking all the right boxes, right? Again, I go for the 40 round mag here. If you want to jump up to 50, feel free to do so. And the rest of the setup is pretty similar to the Lachmann Shroud. I got the TCG10 rear grip for the better control. I tuned for the inverse of better mobility again. Mobile stock, since it actually works now and offers the good mobility benefits and boosts there. 7mm laser, better ADS and sprint to fire. Then I like the Falcon barrel on here. It's that better movement speed and better ADS speed, so you're just more aggressive, which is nice to see as well. I like the benefits of that. It definitely feels snappy, definitely feels agile, and that's perfect for an SMG setup. Then at number 4, I've got the ISO, but like I said, you could flip 4 and 5 here, and I don't think really there'd be a huge argument because both these SMGs are so good and so similar, especially in that first damage range. The ISO does perform a bit better outside of like 10 to 12 meters, though. It is going to be shakier, though. The recoil here is a bit more noticeable, so that's why some players prefer the MP5. Really, it's just a preference thing. Both are so good. This is a setup that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. We got the 45 round drum, basic extended mag, sheer rear grip for the better ADS and sprint to fire. Cheetah stock is basically just like the mobile stock on the MP5. It's pretty much all the same pros there. 7mm laser for that faster ADS and sprint to fire. Then I got the KT85 compensator. That's going to again help out with that recoil, which is definitely more worthwhile here than on the MP7 because there's actually noticeable recoil here, whereas obviously on the MP7 it's much easier. It's much more laser beam like, so it definitely does help out in this situation for sure. Now at number 3, I've got the M13B. This thing is a super consistent rifle and has been for some time. I've been on that M13 train for a bit here because it's just flat out good for mid to long range. Its damage per mag isn't phenomenal, but pretty much everything else is. It's actually got a very competitive TTK, one of the best in class, very easy to use as well. It's got good velo, and even with this setup, I've changed it around a bit recently to make it even easier to use. It's just so consistent and so reliable, one that I've been running a lot while going for nukes here recently. Again, AMOT V4 as always for me. 60 round mag, you definitely want this with that fire rate. 45 is definitely not enough in this situation. Now recently I have dropped high velocity and I've gone for the deadly trio of Ripper Underbarrel for the better stabilization and stability, Harbinger suppressor, but if you want you could also go over to Echoless 80 if you just don't care about the recoil and you want a slightly faster ADS, feel free to switch that out. And then also the Echelon barrel for better range, better velocity, better control, and better pizza. You add in all of these, this thing shoots ridiculously straight even over some longer ranges, 70, 80, 90 meters, so you'll be able to stay on target and that damage per mag factor will not be as big of a deal because you're hitting your shots at the end of the day, right? So this thing is extremely reliable. Number 2, I've got the RAPP. Personally, this is my favorite gun in the game, and I won't lie, it was kind of tough not saying this is definitively number 1, but you got to recognize the weaknesses here. We got to look at this objectively and unbiased. It's slow. It's very slow. The reload is really just bad. It's so rough when you get into a sticky situation. You have to reload this thing because you're stuck in the animation because, you know, we got to have those, non-cancelable reloads. But outside of that, when you are shooting, this thing is nuts. Its long-range TTK is basically the best in the game right now when you're landing shots. Realistically, it's like one of the best in the game, basically, because it's really not all that bad in terms of control either, which is surprising for how dominant this gun is. Again, I've got AMOT V4, TCG 10 rear grip straight up for that better control. Now, yes, I do run an extended mag on an LMG because the fire rate is that ridiculous here, and as I mentioned, I don't want to reload, so this helps out stopping that reload just a little bit. It delays it ever so slightly, right? I also go for the Hound 9G grip. This helps out with steadiness and stability even more than Ripper does, so that's a nice benefit there. Then the Talon 5 suppressor, again, if you wanted to use Polar Fire S instead, if you don't want that slower reload with Talon but better control, you could definitely swap them out. No wrong answer there, but I love this gun. It's what I was pretty much mained and ranked this entire season to get Iridescent, so like, thing's a beast. And then lastly, at number 1, I gotta give it to the 7.62. It is not without its cons. Its damage per mag is definitely not the greatest for sure, but its overall TTK is best in class for the rifles. Thing packs the power, and it's a little bit more aggressive than some of the LMG options here. So while it's number 1 on this list, there's a lot of arguments to be made for other guns, which I guess is overall good for the meta, but it also is kind of weird that there's not definitively a weapon that is the go-to. So depending on how you like your setups, that's either a good or a bad thing, right? But here, I got AMOT V4 yet again. As I mentioned, that 40 round mag, the damage per mag is not insanely good. That's just sort of something you have to live with. And then because there is some noticeable recoil here, I load up on the control. The Cast 10 barrel, better velocity, better range, better control, per usual, 3-in-1 combo. Ripper under barrel, great as always for that stabilization, making that pattern more predictable. Then Talon 5, again, it's that heavier option, so it adds in some recoil control. Polar Fire S, or even just straight up going for like a compensator if you wanted to. Bore 490 could be a really good choice here too. Your velocity will be a little bit lacking though, so just keep that in mind. But you could go with any of those 3, and those are good choices here for the 7.62 in general. The thing's gonna fry as long as you hit your shots. And that being said, those are the top 10 best weapons in Warzone right now, and that's gonna wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.